So one of the pillars of my comedy and what I write and produce as an artist comes from the fact that I worked 10 years in restaurants, and I believe that working in restaurants changes the core of who you are as a person.
You know what's weird when you work in restaurants? Is that it changes the core of who you are as a person.
You know, I have stand-up bits about this, and I have written a book called Who Would Have Thought a Server with PTSD Story that is on Amazon, it's published. And I believe that you deal with people, like you're dealing with all sorts of humans from the staff to the customers, and that, changes who you are. So today we're gonna talk about how you go into restaurants and how the talks like about racism, about things, and about tipping culture that has evolved to a point now that when you work in restaurants, you just meet the reality. So one thing that happens when you work in restaurants is you get exposed to the general public, and then you have the reality of people lashing on to you their projections. So when you start working in restaurants, you want to make tips, and tips culturally is a thing that it's it's very weird because some people believe in tips and some people don't. That's a discussion that has been going on for dates. But guess what, man? Culturally, legally, yes, there's a thing that you can't get out of it without tipping someone, but you're gonna be looked down upon by the majority of society, especially if you go back to that restaurant that you didn't tip someone. So you learn the behaviors and the patterns from each culture. And listen, I'm gonna say something here that is very risky, but it's not my own saying. I didn't say this. I heard this from 10 years in restaurant, from working in the fine dining to working in the nightclub to the shitty tiki bars, about black people. A lot of people, they start working in restaurants and they say the following: I was not racist before I start working here, but now I am. Here's what I believe this means. It's not that we're saying that we're racist against color or anything like that, but we are racist against people who don't tip. And a lot of times, black people don't tip. One of my main bits of my comedy is called Latino Boy, because so two situations happened with me, and it's true. The lowest tip I ever made in my life came from a black man. The story is, this is recent, by the way. This was 2025, because it was a 5-star